Okay,
What's the question?
I think this will work better. So yesterday we were talking about technology. Yesterday we were talking about technology.
Yeah, I will. I think all three of us can interact, and I think I'm not going to give you any details about the books and things like that. That I can tell you that why I wrote those two books, and
Okay.
But then I see that your Ummi is a better talker than I am, and
Not today.
and she can interact too. But I think it is more or less the history of our life in this country. When we came here in 1971, and I got that job in Livingston, Alabama, and that was quite a different kind of environment from where we are coming. We're coming from Pakistan, and that's a particular thing that was really a factor that was very different, was that is the Bible Belt that we call it, and that was in the 70s when I looked at the situation over there, and a lot of churches and people very dedicated to Christianity and kind of more or less very conservative people, and then being a Muslim, having some background in Islamic history. And then I realized that maybe I should write something that would help people understand that there are a lot of similarities between, or I should say, among the three Abrahamic religions, that is Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Just an idea that kept on in my mind. I did not have any resources over there because, there's nothing in the library, the university library, about Islam or any people of Islam, any scholars or anything. So really, I think the effort started in more earnest when you all moved to Cincinnati.
In 82,
and then your mom got a job in the library over there. But that was a good opportunity. And then I started a little more seriously about it, and I didn't know the final shape of the book. But
I got him books on interlibrary loan from all over the world, British Museum.
Ummi got me some books from different sources.
Yeah.
So she has been really the major contributor to this thing, and then I realized that how people react to their religious beliefs, and to me the most important thing is how they interact with other people or people of other religions. And I could see that in that area of America, this is very different. And of course, you went to the Sumter Academy, and I know that you had some difficulties adjusting to that environment. But then that after 1981, 82, 83, whatever, when I was coming here during vacation or during breaks, then I got those things. And then, the most important trigger was the 2001, the 9/11.
Yeah.
That, then I thought, well, the people already in America, and I think in the West, I should say Europe and America, there's a very negative impression of Islam in the West. And it has been there for centuries, and it is still there. And I could see that there's a really misperception, because there are 15 Arabs and 4 other people, all Muslims, who did that 9/11, the horrendous tragedy, And I felt about it, I felt very bad about it, because I thought that they were going to further strengthen their misperception about Islam. So after that, I was more serious, and that is where I started really writing the thing. The first book was published in 2003, Islam, Religion of Peace and Justice, and that is basically the basics of Islam, and then go on to the social impact of Islam in terms of the society in Medina, and when the Prophet was the leader of Medina, and then the importance of interpersonal relationships, and what is really the role of religion, and then somebody asked the Prophet, said, you see, what is religion? And he said, it is good character. And the fellow asked the question 4 times, and the Prophet gave the same answer. He says, good character. And the good character is you control your aggression and you control your anger. Those are the two things. And of course have good relations with all the people.
Yeah.
So that was really a very broad view of Islam, and I liked it. I said this is why you people believe in something as a religion. It is not just the dogma part,
Mm-hmm.
Those things, which I have put, of course, the parts of dogma in the book, in the first chapter, as the five foundational elements of Islam,
the pillars they call them.
From the Shahada to prayer and to charity and fasting and pilgrimage, all those kind of things. But those are more or less a typical, I think you can find it in any book. The important part was, why are these things required? Why do we do these things? And so, and then the second chapter is the social relations chapter that deals with the importance of social relations, which we Muslims don't really think about. And the social relations, not within your own community, but with the other religions too, with the other religious communities. And then, how the marriage in Islam, and the role of the community in Islam, interpersonal relations and marriage and divorce, and those things which deal with the social relations. The important thing, I think, which I have done throughout this book, which is the theme, the real theme of the book, that there are commonalities among these 3. And I have discussed those, marriage in Christianity, marriage in Judaism, and all those kind of things, And then, the emphasis on the human relationships, and the economy or economic system of Islam, which is basically dealing with how you can distribute wealth in the society as far as possible, as an equal. I cannot say this. I don't think you can create a society with economic equality, but you can create a society where those people who are rich can help the poor, so that it has some kind of balance, which is not there. But that is where the charity came, and then the inheritance laws. This is the first religion that allowed inheritance to women. The first religion. There's nothing in Judaism at that time, and I don't know much about Christianity in that regard, but I have not seen where you have. But that was one thing. The other thing, of course, is the equality of gender. That is, the men and women are equal in dignity, equal in their rights, equal in all the other areas.
Education.
Where education, yeah, sure, and you know those kind of things. Which, of course, again, makes me sad when I look at the Muslim society, they don't have that.
And women can
You know,
do their own business.
that's right, their business, they can do their business. And then, of course, you know, in the political realm, I basically said, you know, that, you know, people say, well, there's no democracy in Islam. There were no democracy in the 7th century over there, except for the Greek democracy, which came before that. And it was not really that much of a democracy, because the women did not vote and the slaves do not vote and all those kind of things. But anyway, I can give credit to the Greeks that they had that at the time of Plato and at the time of Aristotle and at the time of Socrates. But then, you know, that's a different topic that we have. But then I have in that chapter, you know, I have those ingredients in terms of democracy, that it's equal rights and all those kind of things. And then, of course, you go on to the other parts where I have indicated that, you know, that multiple pathways to divine grace, that, you know, there are different religions and that include the three religions plus others, you know, Zoroastrians and others, you know, that they have their beliefs, but they believe in the same God. And they also believe that, you know, your good deeds and good words and good thoughts are the one that will earn you salvation. You know, that I think is the more or less a summary of the first book. Of course,
That was the first book.
Yeah, that's right. That was the first book, so that was the motivation, and I think the reason I wrote that book. And the second book is basically but why did I write the second? The second book was, you know, what happened in 2003. Now we know that, which is the reaction of the Bush government,
Iraq War,
to the horrendous 9/11, you know.
Yeah.
And the reaction, of course, in my judgment, which is really a very humble kind of judgment, that the reaction of the American government was, I think, overreaction to the whole thing. And what made me very sad, was their attack on Iraq, because Iraq had nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
And then, you know, what I thought was, you know, why could a Western nation attack a Muslim country without any reason and destroy its people and its property, and that is, you know, nobody can do anything.
Yeah.
That, you know, even the people, the Muslim countries, some of them, you know, like Saudi Arabia and others, you know, they have a lot of influence, but they did not say anything. They did not, you know, they had their own animosities about Saddam Hussein, you know. But then, you know, that was the thing. I said, well, what happened to people? What happened to the Muslims over a period of time? Because Muslim civilization was or I should say Islamic civilization, was the greatest civilization of its time. That is, the Prophet died in 632, and then that's the 7th century. And then, from the 8th century to about the 16th or 17th century, I should say 16, probably 700, that's just an approximate. Those people, they were in medicine, they were in astronomy, they were in history, they were in geography, they were in all kinds of fields. And they wrote books. They wrote books at the time when there was no paper. And not even reliable kind of ink, that they could write with.
They translated.
But then, they were philosophers, they translated and interpreted the philosophy of the Greeks. And then they gave interpretation. People of medicine, one of them or two or three of them, in fact, wrote encyclopedias of medicine. There was one fellow who was called Avicenna in the Anglicized. He was Abdullah ibn Sina, I think, if I can remember names very well. But anyway, his encyclopedia was in circulation in Europe until the 18th century. And he died in, I think, 1037. Now, don't catch me on the dates because
That's okay. We can look those up.
But that is, around that time. Now we're talking about 11th century to the 18th century.
Yeah.
Now what we say about that is, the Dark Ages in Europe. The Dark Ages in Europe, that is the time when that was the Dark Age of Europe. Because, the Dark Ages starting about the fall of Roman Empire, which is by the 5th century, at the end of the 5th century, and then the beginning of Renaissance, which is in the 16th century.
Yeah.
So you have about 1,000 years. 1,000 years of ignorance.
Yeah.
Ignorance, and then, the extremism and fanaticism of Christianity, the Inquisitions and all those kinds of things. So I have mentioned these things in brief, and this is what I wanted to find out, And I said that, as long as the nations have knowledge, and the knowledge progresses, because knowledge is progress, reason is progress, and science and philosophy and those things, the knowledge brings them up, ignorance brings them down. And that is what happened, to the Muslims, because, when Europe rose, and I have mentioned that in terms of civilizations, the different civilizations, the early old civilization. Really, the Europeans came as a civilization probably after 18th century or 17th century, except the episode of the Greeks and Romans that you have, and I should accept those. But then, you have, during this time, the Dark Ages, The Dark Ages, there's not much progress in terms of knowledge. That is why they are called Dark Ages, the Dark Age of Europe. And so that was, that was, and I think this is what I should still say this is tentative because I do not know all the civilizations. I did mention some of them, like, the earlier civilization, Mesopotamia, that is that area in Iraq now, what we call the Mesopotamia, the Euphrates.
Tigris and Euphrates.
Tigris and the Mesopotamia, of course, the land between two rivers. In Greek, I think you know more about that. But anyway, that was the reason. And I have, and of course, in this book that I have tried, and of course, depending on the sources, and I said them again, indebted to your mom, your Ammi, that she gave me some different sources that were not accessible to me. But I have those, and I...
Tell him also that you made me read all those chapters.
Yeah, that's right. And you have...
I had to.
And I have, of course, the first two chapters, of course, are really related to knowledge. Knowledge in general, the first chapter, in terms of philosophy and science and all, reason and all those kind of. And then the second one I have selected, I don't know how many, probably 20 famous Muslim scholars that I have. And then the rest of it is more or less like the sectarianism and all those kind of things. And finally, what should really religion be able to do? And I finally said, religion is a part of life, yes. But I think it is not something that should be a basis for hatred and prejudice and hating others, degrading others, because, and this was one subject I really focused on for some time, and that was, the relationship of the Muslims in the early period of time with the other religions. And I have, for that, I have consulted and quoted some of the Christian scholars. A Muslim scholar would say, well, it was a good relationship. But what I wanted to know was whether there were non-Muslims who were saying this. And there were non-Muslim scholars who have said that, particularly the Christians, Christian scholar, Karen Armstrong is one of them. And then you have Montgomery Watts, and you have Esposito, and other people, who have written about this, that this was the only religion at that time, for some time, that was tolerant of other religions. And Europe always opposed it from the beginning to the end. But anyway, this was,
Well, it was after that greatness, the Muslim became, they had their downfall.
Yeah, that's right.
Because they did not work hard. They did not study, they stopped studying and went and...
Yeah, that's right.
Why do you think they stopped studying, Mom?
Well, one basic thing, and I think it is still a hypothesis, I think the religious leaders or so-called religious scholars, I call them mullahs, they were the basic reason for it. Because, when Ibn Sina, who started, who was working, and he was in different fields, philosophy and medicine and astronomy and so on. And these mullahs, or Maulvi Sahiban, whatever I should say them, they said, well, this is un-Islamic. Philosophy is un-Islamic. Science is un-Islamic. And those people, astronomers who are doing this, they are really getting into the secrets of heaven, and it is apostasy. It is blasphemy, I think that's the basic.
That's the main reason.
I think to me that is the main reason. Because, and then the rulers, they followed these mullahs. And these people like Ibn Sina and Razi and others, they were sometimes jailed. They were put in jail or incarcerated.
Right.
And in houses, in their own houses,
Right, kind of like...
It is like the Galileo.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like Galileo in Europe.
And this is what, people, when I tell people, I told her I think your mom and we went to a synagogue and gave them lessons about four lectures on Islam.
Right.
At that time I said, in Spain, when the Muslims were shunted out of there, in Spain, and the king and his wife,
Ferdinand and
Ferdinand
Isabella.
Isabella, yeah, you're right.
Ferdinand and
Yeah.
Isabella.
Oh, and I meant Copernicus.
Yeah.
That's who I was thinking of.
Yeah, that's right.
Copernic, the Polish guy.
And then during his time, one of the archbishops or whatever, he collected all the Arabic manuscripts. And according to non-Muslim scholars, they were more than 1 million. And he burned it.
Bonfire.
He bonfire, And they set fire to the Muslim libraries. There were libraries.
No, some of the, I read in the library, some of the priests, Christian priests, they hid them in their attics or somewhere.
Right. And the ladies could not believe these Muslims, that I said, I told her that, it is in the in the pages of history you should go to. And I gave her some names of the people, who have written, non-Muslim, Christian writers who have said that. But now nobody believes it, because this is what is happening to the Muslim world,
Yes.
Because,
So it's easy for people to look at
that's right.
the behavior today
That's
Today.
right.
and assume that is the way it
That
has
has
always
been through
been.
the-
It's not only that, but it was also the reaction of the colonialization. The West, after
that's
that,
right.
when the Muslim had the downfall,
Yeah.
they invaded their countries, like India.
Yes.
They went there like small merchants, but later on they conspired and killed, and they got hold of the whole thing. Or they made Hindu and Muslim enemies each other, or somebody, in this way. Like nowadays, the things are also happening, but they are sophisticated.
Yes.
But
Yeah,
at that time it was cruelties.
And then it's a presupposition, it's a presumption that they have. This is what they presume, that this is what Islamic society, Muslims, I shouldn't say Islamic society, Muslim society is
Muslim are giving them the
at
chance.
this time,
Yes.
And I will give you one example of when the British came to India, and of course in 1857 they became the great rulers of India. And there were some British people who went over there. One was, his name was Macaulay, Macaulay, something like that. And he came to improve education in India. And one of his statements that he said at that time, he said, these people talk about the Muslim contribution to knowledge. I say, in my judgment, all the Muslim contribution, all the books and everything they have written could be accommodated in 2 shelves in our high school. It is in the history books. But that is, and I still believe that, we are still going down in terms of our contribution to
went down.
knowledge. And I think Rami and I, we got a book from a library. The title was A Civilization
Of the West.
West and the Rest.
And the rest.
And he has said, and I think I agree with him, not everything that he has said, but he gave examples. He said that, and during the Ottoman Empire, a very famous astronomer gave even the name of the person, Taqiyuddin, and he went to the Sultan and asked him for money to establish an astronomy lab, And after some convincing that he did, the Sultan said, okay. So the laboratory or observatory was established and built. And the mullahs objected to that. Well, he is pondering over or getting into the secrets of heaven, and this is blasphemy. So they went to, the fellow was called Sheikhul Islam, the head of Islam in the Ottoman Empire, and told him that, complained to him. And he was convinced. He went to the Sultan and told him that, this is wrong. This is anti-Islamic. You won't believe it, but they destroyed
Now everything is un-Islamic.
They destroyed the observatory. So, these are the signs of downfall of a nation.
Yeah.
Downfall of a
When
nation.
they stop studying, they stop education, they stop thinking, then you get stagnant.
Yeah, that's right.
If the stream is flowing, it's a fresh water. When it's stopped, it's the dirty water. All the germs go there. So that's what their minds are stagnant.
And you won't believe it, but there's a fellow, Al-Tabari is his name. He's a Persian. He says, a lot of time I read books, and they say the Arab scholar did this. There are no scholars. There are no Arab scholars. There are probably a couple of them. Most of the scholars were Persian. Because Persia was a great civilization. The great civilization
Yes.
of his time, And then this fellow, I'm talking about, and he is, I think, probably 9th century. And he wrote a book on the history of Islam and really history of the world, more or less. And at that time, he also, of course, wrote interpretation of the Quran, but I'm talking about the history. His books were translated by the New York, SUNY, State University of New York. It was translated, and it is in 39 volumes. It is in many libraries. 39 volumes, and of course volume is not,
Tabari?
it is not 500 Tabari.
Yeah, we had in UC.
And this is, I saw it in UC library, and I have used its books in there. It is not 500 pages, but they are about average 300 pages, I think.
They were great poets
Now
in
you're talking
Iran.
about 10th century, and these people are writing it. There's another fellow, and people, there are people here who do not know him, and they never read him, They say, well, he could not have done that. But, this is something we deny our own accomplishment. The people have done that. Because some people, the scholars, were Shia. And their contributions, they were laid down, no contribution. Masoodi is one of them. He gave the idea of evolution. Now that is 10th, 11th, he did no theory of evolution, no, it's not Darwin.
Yeah.
But, he had this idea that things have evolved. Because then you're fighting with the theory of creation, which is in the Quran and Torah and all those.
Right.
So, when you say this, people say, oh, you're not a Muslim, you don't know anything about Islam,
Yes.
So that thing also, it has been for centuries that the Shia scholars were then, negated, and nobody cares for them. Now there's a fellow Sunni scholar, he is the one that I have read most, his name is Ibn Khaldun, and I've also mentioned him in there. Now he has also written a history of Islam, a history of the word, but that history of the word is not available. That is, I don't know what happened to it. But he wrote an introduction to the history of the word. And that introduction
It's in 3 volumes.
in 3 volumes. Each volume is 500 pages, or more or less.
Yeah, just the introduction.
Just the introduction,
Yeah.
And when I talk to people, they don't understand anything. And they still do not recognize. But anyway, this to me is the thing. And I think your mom, me, and I, we go to the interfaith, and sometime I get into this, what the contribution Muslims have made in the past, and you look at me with eyebrows going up, and I can't believe it. And I tell them, that the Quran says there is only one God of the Muslims, the Christians, and the Jews, and
It's the
others,
same God for everybody.
Zoroastrians, and so on. And one time, when I said this earlier, there's a Roman Catholic person sitting there, ha ha ha. And that was, that is something that I looked at him. And I said, that Pope John Paul II, he has said this several times in his speeches to young people. There's the same God. Same God. Billy Graham has said that since 1986. Now his
Not
son,
his son.
Frank Graham, of course, he does not even care to talk about Islam. Well, he does,
Unfortunately.
negative being. But I personally feel, I think I have transformed myself over the years after studying these people. And of course I have gone through, I shouldn't say studied the Torah, but I have gone through the King James version of the Bible, and I have read the 5 books of Torah, and those kinds of things. Not really in a way that word for word, but when I was looking for material, I could only do that by going to the original sources, Now, of course, Bible has changed over the years, but the basics, I think, are still there. But then, we have, of course, some, before I finish, I think I should say that some of the Muslims, some Muslim or most of the Muslim scholars, they have also, degraded other religions. When they compare Islam with other religions, very few examples of that. But they also,
That's wrong too.
they don't really get the spirit of it.
Yeah.
I always tell them, I was impressed with the Sermon on the Mount,
Yes.
which is really a moral, the morals that love your enemy, and for peace, the peaceful people are the ones who are children of God. So those kind of things, I accept them and I respect them.
Yeah.
And this is what the Quran says, that those people who believe in Torah, those who believe in the gospel, the Quran, and others. There are Mandians and there are others, you know, the Sabians and those kinds, and the Magians. The Magians are the Zoroastrians. Zoroastrianism is really the first monotheistic religion that came probably around 1500 BC or maybe 1400, because when you put these dates, of course, they are really not accurate at all, because you are guessing.
Yeah, yeah, and
Like
there was probably some connection with the ancient Egypt,
Right.
right?
Sure.
Amenhotep
That's right.
and others, right?
That's right, because these civilizations, like Egyptian civilization, is almost 4,000 years old, you know, at the same time, you know, the Indus Valley civilization in India, you know, and the Chinese civilization. These are your oldest ones, different times, but, you know, that is what it is. And Zoroastrianism is the one which was the religion of the Persians.
Mm.
It started in Persia, and it progressed, and it was there for centuries.
Yeah.
The Cyrus the Great, you know, who is around 500 BC, you know, some people say he was a Zoroastrian, but you know, he is the one, I think, who has left some of the writings that gave people freedom of religion.
Yeah. Isn't that the culture that we basically get the word Khuda from?
That's right.
Right? It's pre-Islamic.
Yes, that's right. And then, you know, that is you know, a great accomplishment at that time, you know. I mean, that is almost 2,500 years ago. And that is, and also on human rights, you know, things like that. But that is, you know, that is really the thoughts that I...
Now the Al-Qaeda and the terrorists, you know, they refer the Quran, they take out of the context the things.
Yes.
And half-truths, you know.
Yes.
They interpret differently.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then they kill the people, and then they say they are going to the Jannah.
Yes. Yeah, it's a very...
How could they go when Islam forbids to kill any human being?
It's a very
if you kill one person, you kill the whole nations, all people.
Right. This is a
if you save one person, you save all the nations.
Yeah, this is a very common tactic, is it not, of religious extremists from all kinds.
And now they started, you know, messing with the educated people and brainwashing them.
Yes.
Yeah, that girl, you know that girl that took a very, very great stand, you know, Malala, you know.
Oh, yeah. 15, 14 years old girl.
Yeah.
She stood, you know,
she stood up against
but luckily she survived.
But, you know, and I think you have that 3 cups of tea, you know.
Yeah.
And now, you know, all those girls in the schools, they are saying...
Martinson, you know, doing a wonderful job for women.
Yeah.
But now, you know, even these people in Pakistan, in the Constitution, the women are allowed to vote. And they have stopped women from voting.
For going.
Even in the Constitution.
Yeah, yeah.
So they don't follow any constitution, it's just un-Islamic.
On the tribal area, they made their own rules.
Yeah, well, you know, one of the main things I find difficult about the legal system there is, for example, the anti-blasphemy laws that they have, right? Because those are used continually to harass people who are
they were not originally there.
In pursuing science and philosophy and comparative religion and these kinds of things.
Any person, any mullah could get up and say, oh, I saw him burning the Quran.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's very
So
sad.
it's a
And
means of
those
control.
And Salman, the thing is, that they believe in these things without any basis. They're their own interpretation that, the Quran says that blasphemy laws are not in the Quran. Apostasy laws not in the Quran. But they will quote some hadith.
Right.
The traditions of the Prophet. No, those traditions, one thing that the Prophet in his lifetime, he did not encourage people to write down that his sayings are things like, you will forget the Quran and you will
And that's what happening
depend
now.
on these, and this is what has happened.
Yeah.
Now he died in 632, and these collections of hadiths, they came out in the 9th century. There are at least 250 years between his death and the coming up of these things.
Right.
And how can you judge the truth of those things?
Right. Which is a similar problem to the Christian Gospels
That's
of
right.
the New Testament, right?
That's right. And then, of course, the scholars are saying, well, what makes sense is, if you find a tradition which is in contravention of the Quran, this is automatically should be rejected,
Yes.
because you cannot have two sources contradicting each other. And and now these people, and I have mentioned these, the four schools of jurisprudence in Islam, and this is the last one, where this Wahhabism comes in. And these are the most conservative. These are the people who are called Ahl Hadith, because they give more importance to Hadith than anything else, And this is, what the Saudi people are doing. They are spreading it, throughout the world, throughout the Muslim world,
Yeah.
They gave so much money, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, to start the religious schools where little boys, they have to memorize the Quran, the whole thing, without understanding. The little 7, 8 years old, By the time they go to the school, their brains are almost, half cells are dead.
Yeah.
I can give you the example of one of our relatives, and their child was bright, but they took him off the school for 1 year, and he memorized the Quran. Then he went back to the school, but the 9th grade exam was supposed to be outside, not in the school.
External exam.
And where the examiners come and they test you memorize to represent him in that exam.
He cheated.
He cheated, but the friend was caught.
Yes.
They caught, and he was chickened out, and he said that person hired him. So they arrested the friend, they arrested the other boy. His father very respectable, and he has built a mosque in a city over there, and they cheat, they give money to the schools, and then their children getting good grades. And then he was stayed 1 night in jail. But then the father gave the money. Everybody takes bribe there.
Yeah.
And the boy was out, and his record was expunged.
Yes.
But the point is that that's what Saudi Arabia is doing. He should give for the science and medical or for some other things.
Yes. Yeah. I agree. Yeah. Well, thank you, Abu. That was a very good
You're
summary.
most welcome.
Very good summary.
Thank you, Nawaz.
I should thank you because you have helped me in this. Your contribution is more than mine.
Okay, I think he's tired. Let's go.
Yeah, I think that's it. What time is it?
Yeah.
Almost
5:30.
5:35 almost.
Yeah, so that was a
Akhar
good
called
session.
when I was here, but I did not